Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Sitheads Meditation Club. My name is John. I organize this group. Sitheads is a sitting and social group for people interested in deep meditation practice. If you want to hang out with us, you can find us at sitheads.com. That's sit-heads.com. We get together every Thursday to meditate and talk about practice. Usually, or I would say at least half the time as just sort of a peer group sharing knowledge and support, and then some of the time with guest teachers like we have today. It is my absolute pleasure to welcome and introduce David Leonard. David Leonard is right over there. He is a meditation teacher with over 50 years of practice experience. He is also, for whatever it's worth, my teacher's teacher, sort of my grand teacher, which makes it a real pleasure to welcome him to this group. David, correct me if I get any of this stuff wrong, David, but my understanding is that David was a monk for over 3 years in the Theravada Buddhist tradition in Sri Lanka. He is good friends with the great meditation master, the Venerable Pemasiri, based in Sri Lanka. David did, I believe, something like 8 years of retreat. So he is a very experienced yogi with a lot of practice under his belt. I understand his main area of expertise to be the Theravada contemplative tradition, especially in the lineage of Mahasi Sayadaw. David, did I miss anything important in introducing you?
No.
I got it?
That's good, yeah.
All right. I know I'm talking a lot. We got sort of whacked for that the last time that you visited, but I can't help myself. This is who I am. So we're going to do a short conversation, maybe 20 minutes, 25 minutes, something like that, between David and myself, which will help sort of seed the Q&A, give you some ideas about things you might want to ask. And then we will have an open Q&A for you all to ask questions of David. David, do you have anything that you would like to say before we start?
Not really. Thank you for inviting me.
You're very welcome. So I have some questions for you. There we are. All right. So my first question, David, and my hope is that rather than this be just I sort of pitch you a question, you answer it, I pitch you another question. I'm totally okay with this becoming a conversation. If you want to push back on something I said, or you want to ask me a clarifying question, I'm okay with there being some back and forth, though obviously we're mostly interested in what you have to say. So in today's sort of spiritual marketplace, there are all sorts of options, right? Every sort of spiritual tradition is now on offer on the internet, or you can find teachers in your area teaching in all sorts of different styles, all the various schools of Buddhism, and of course all the non-Buddhist contemplative traditions. Some are more prevalent than others, but they're all sort of there for people in a way that wasn't true decades past. So as a practitioner of the Theravada Dharma and the sort of Mahasi style Vipassana practice, what would you say? This is a weird question, but why choose that? What are the unique advantages, benefits, qualities of the Theravada Dharma and Mahasi Sayadaw's approach to practicing Vipassana?
Well, I think I'd start by saying the mind is a very complex, sensitive thing. And when you decide that you want to meditate, you're picking a tool that you want to use to alter your mind, to shape your mind, to improve your mind, and I think that you should be really careful about what you choose, because, meditation is a great tool for improvement, but if you have a faulty system, or you're not applying it correctly, it can do damage also. I've met a lot of meditators that would be better off if they'd never meditated, that got off on a wrong turn somewhere and it snowballed, or, grew, the problem grew beyond their capacity to deal with it. And the other thing is, if you're going to meditate, I would say pick a long established tradition that has a good track record, and you really should start out with a teacher, so that you learn the method correctly. For starters, that's maybe 80% of the whole project is doing the practice correctly. And so if you learn the practice, a good practice, you learn it correctly, and then you have someone that you check with. I mean, if you're in a retreat or something, you would probably meet with that person daily. If you're doing it like we are, virtually or something, maybe every week. And an experienced teacher can spot when you're veering off course, or doing too much of this and not enough of that, and can shape and correct your practice. I mean, if you just read a book and it sounds good and you start really trying hard, that's kind of dangerous, can be. I mean, some people can just read something and then they do it correctly, but I think it's very rare. So it's just, meditation is a powerful tool that you're using on your mind, and it should be carefully entered into and chosen and helped along. People have said to me, "Oh, I want to be a meditation teacher." And I say, okay, well, 80% of what you do should be getting them to do it correctly. And the rest of what you need to know is how to deal with problems, how to spot and correct deviations. When people get off, the nature of the mind is not to go towards enlightenment. It's to go the mind basically goes the other direction. So when you're trying to turn around your mind and aim it at something that you quite probably don't understand, you should have help if you can get it. It's really, I think that's very important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
you should decide, what do you want? Do you want to feel good? Do you want to get calm and dreamy and have wonderful, peaceful, joyful feelings? Well, that's a certain kind of meditation. Do you want to learn about and understand the mind and the body and penetrate, some of the more profound truths and all that? Well, then that's another kind of meditation. So you should be well informed and try and get hooked up with, good, reputable. I mean, and people have books and they don't, I meditated and I thought this was a good idea and I borrowed this from there and I put that in here and I think I like this and all that kind of stuff. And you get a hybrid that may or may not, that hasn't been tested for, we don't know the long-term effects. For instance, traditional meditations have been going on for 2,500 years. The contemporary versions of them, like the Mahasi method, has been going on for 75 years with 2 million practitioners. So they're not new to this, and they've seen, every circumstance possible. And because you're a good meditator, this is a different subject sort of, but because you're a good meditator doesn't mean you're a good teacher or that you know how to. There are teaching traditions that pass on the skills and of how to recognize different things and what to do about them. I mean, the big thing that a meditation teacher should know is how to deal with adverse conditions, adverse reactions. That's really important, and you don't know that unless you've been trained in it and done a lot of it, But it's not uncommon for people to get off track slightly, and some, especially if they're doing a samatha practice. Concentration has a way of snowballing and growing. So a wrong idea or tendency or something can get really blown up and magnified in a samatha practice. So, I'd say go with, a good, reputable, long-standing, established track record. Yeah.
Yeah. That's really interesting, David, because you just sort of slaughtered two sacred cows of at least two sacred cows of what might be no, we love that here, of what might be considered or what you might call like the sort of pragmatic Dharma internet. So this is a thing that I sometimes have to introduce guest teachers to who come to us because they don't always know about it, but there's a sort of subculture or a loosely linked network of subcultures,
yes,
situated largely on the internet, where people are talking very frankly about practice, talking about awakening and taking awakening as their aim. And there are elements of sort of experimentation. There are there's a lot of hybridization. There's a lot of sort of talking about models and frameworks and evolving these models and frameworks. And there are also, I would say, certain teachers whose names you will hear over and over again if you hang out in those circles. And yes. I think two of the big things in those circles are, one, try a bunch of different stuff and see what works. It's okay. Feel free to combine different things and essentially experiment and use your mind as a laboratory in which to learn about how meditation does or doesn't or should or shouldn't work. So you basically pretty explicitly said, don't do that, right? Because you said, use a well-established tradition, right? Stick with a well-established tradition because of the safety and reliability that comes from its track record. So that's one thing. And then the other thing is, you said you should really have a teacher. It's not a great idea to sort of do a DIY meditation training out of books. Now, in this sort of pragmatic Dharma internet, people will start meditating off of a blog post, forget a book. And now there is, I'm not trying to paint a negative picture. This is just the facts. I think that people would proudly say, we learn about Dharma from in an open source way from books, from the internet, and from each other, peer to peer, right? We are not bound by teachers. We do not rely on hierarchies or authority figures. We talk to each other. But I think it's much rarer to have a teacher who you can work with regularly. I know of very few, and I think it probably is, to be honest with you, I remember it was for me kind of frustrating to hear a teacher like you say something like, well, what you should really find is a teacher who will talk with you every week or something like that, be there for you every day on retreat. Those are hard to come by, is my
Yeah,
understanding. And I think one of the biggest questions that people ask in the sit heads group is, hey, do you know a teacher? You got like, they're like, it's like they're asking for drugs or something. Like, you got the stuff? Like, do you have a, do you have the hookup? Are you the
yeah.
plug? And so I guess my question is this: is it really so necessary to have a teacher that you have this one-on-one relationship with? Is it possible to go on retreat with a reputable teacher, get teachings from them, do your own thing in between retreat, and get your teachings on retreats, which I think is more viable for most
Yes.
people? And then my follow-up question to that, so I want to hear what you have to say about that, but my other question is, if the answer is, I said what I said, you should find the teacher, like, did I stutter? Then how do you suggest finding such a being?
Well, I would say I would agree with you. A really good way to get going is to do a retreat with a reputable, a 10-day or longer maybe. That's probably the best and most available source for someone who wants to learn. It can be tough to for your introduction to be 10 days of silence and walking and sitting, though. But that's probably the best way to get going, I would say. The safest way. I don't want to sound, I'm not like some hardcore traditionalist or something like that. But I know from experience, mainly from meeting and working with yogis. I mean, God, I've met a number of people. I don't know if they can be straightened out. They're so just, messed up. Went off on nobody stopped them. And it can be very difficult to straighten out a person with meditation problems or a meditation problem, depending on how entrenched the problem is and how long it's been around. And they may think it's good for them. So yeah, I like the take a 10-day course. And that's a real kind of boot camp of, and see, and then you find out, is this really what I want to do? Does this suit me? Yeah.
And then do you feel like, having done that course, they can practice on their own in until their next retreat? Or is the hope more that, well, maybe they'll connect with that teacher and develop a personal relationship and so forth? Do you think it's just unsafe and unwise, at least in Vipassana practice, to not have a teacher even when you're practicing in your lay life?
If you do a good 10-day course, you should know how to meditate at the end of the 10-day course. And it would be good to have somebody to check in with periodically and say, hey, this happened, or I'm getting this pain in my head, or should I concentrate on it or ignore it or stop meditating for a week? Or, there's a bunch of different ways to deal with different problems. And the thing is any meditation technique is kind of a scattergun approach. It's designed to encompass everyone. Here's what you do, and then they lay it all out. But people aren't all the same. And within that framework, that greater, sort of all-encompassing framework, individuals are so different and have such different backgrounds and inclinations and concerns and abilities and all that it really boils down to meditation is a very individual thing. And I mean, I've said, often said, it's well, anyways, Buddhism or Buddhist meditation is not really a mass media thing. I mean, every benefit, it's really passed on person to person. Everything I've learned has come from my teacher or from Pema theory or from another yogi, really good yogi that's I'm friends with or something. Someone who knows you as an individual. They know how good you are at it, how advanced you are, whether you're lazy or you try too hard. I had a friend, I still have a friend who might be here tonight, I'm not sure, but when I got back from Sri Lanka, well, I didn't meet him until 15 years after I got back from Sri Lanka or something like that. And he kept saying to me, take it easy, man. Just relax. And I said, and I thought, oh yeah, sure. I mean, you're not supposed to, this is, takes drive and commitment and everything, after him saying that to me for like 3 years or something, I finally took his advice. Oh, my meditation just flowered. I got off the, achievement path and just let things happen. As far as when mindfulness practice, I think I said this last week, but I asked Venerable Pema Seri, I said, how much is right effort? How hard, how much effort is right effort? And he said, just enough to be mindful. Well, I mean, that's remarkable information. It's not, until you're exhausted or your blood dries up or you can't stand it anymore. Just enough to be mindful. So that.
Oh, I'm sorry, David. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, but that advice, we could take that and slap that on a website or a Reddit post, right? That can be disseminated to the masses. I'm just playing devil's advocate here. I understand that, it's what you're talking about is more someone's leaning right. You need the teacher to spot that and tell them to go left. Someone's leaning left. You need the teacher to spot that, see that, tell them to go right.
Yeah.
But there are some aspects of it, right? Some of it has been captured wonderfully in books. Mahasi Sayadaw himself has written guides to meditation that are valuable.
The thing is when you're new to this or relatively new and inexperienced, you really don't understand the book. You do in a way, in your way, but that may not be the actual meaning, you know, what the author implied. It's you know, to try and evaluate your own situation is really tough. You know, and why are you qualified? You know, are you qualified to diagnose throat cancer or throat problems or something like that? No, because you're not a ear, nose, and throat guy who has dedicated their life to studying and has seen all kinds of throat problems, etc. I think of myself not as so much as a teacher. Teacher's a big word in Asia. Here, it's pretty lightly used. Anybody decides they want to be a teacher, you know. But we tend to use the word teacher in the West, kind of in the context of a school teacher, you know. But spiritual
which of course we undervalue, right, in our society.
Yes.
So the word is cheapened by the way that we cheapen that really important profession in some ways.
Yeah. But a teacher in Asia is like, they don't call a whole lot of people teachers. You know, a friend of mine asked U Silananda, who you've heard of U Silananda, really developed, wonderful Burmese monk. He had U Silananda over his house, and he had a group of people. It was just kind of a meal, and then everybody talked and asked questions. They asked U Silananda, what do you feel the qualifications for a teacher should be? Oh my God. I mean, his answer was, you know, a Pali scholar, knowledge of all the suttas and the Abhidhamma, memorized the Satipatthana Sutta and other related suttas. I mean, like, and there are meditation teacher societies, for lack of a better word, in Asia, and those are the kind of requirements to get in. Well, you know, that's big, big requirements. There's a big burden. I mean, a good one, but on a so-called teacher. I mean, you know, he becomes responsible for you basically. So he better know what he's doing. It's a big thing to undertake. And I mean, a lot of these teachers nowadays, they can teach you what they think is the way to meditate, but that's about it. I'm not out to criticize, you know, but really spotting problems and knowing how to deal with them, that's really huge. You know, I mean, if everything's going fine, what skills do you need, you know? But when things get off the tracks, that's when it gets important, when the skills become important.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point. And I think it's important to understand when you're looking to teachers, is this teacher's skill set more one of, you might call them like a theoretician or a researcher? If we were to use an academic analogy, they write amazing books, useful books, right? They have deep experience themselves, and they have laid it out in a useful way. Are they theoreticians like that, or are they diagnosticians? Which I think is a difference, as you're saying, a different skill, right?
Yeah.
I have had interviews with teachers who were incredible theoreticians, but proved not to have as much skill in diagnosis. And then other teachers who don't bother with the theoretical stuff. They don't lay out their ideas brilliantly, or they don't at all. But their ability to diagnose, their sensitivity to what's going on in my practice.
That's the important part.
It seems the rarer thing.
Yes, it is.
So I think that's a really important distinction that I appreciate you making.
You know, you're not everybody. You're John Crop, you know, and you're
the one and only.
Yeah. But I mean, you're you, and then somebody else who's meditating is could be completely different, whole other set of skills, knowledges, hang-ups, whatever. It's interesting. While all this is going on in America, all the books and the Zooms and the YouTubes and all that kind of stuff. In Asia, they're pumping out skilled and in many cases enlightened meditators in large numbers. And most of these people, they're like a school teacher and they get 2 weeks off and they reserve time to go to the meditation center, and they go there and they get like 5 minutes of instruction, and they take the instruction and they go to the yogi hall or building or whatever, and they just do it, and they do really well. They don't have they're not loaded with theory and all kinds of ideas and all the subtleties, which is really to their benefit in most cases. They do have faith in the Buddha and his teaching. They have faith in the teacher there. The teacher's an old, established, respected teacher. They just take what he says and do it. They're not like, oh, is this guy really, the real deal, or is he not? Blah 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 blah. And they do amazingly well. Yeah, by the thousands. So while the West is weighing all the pros and cons and all the ins and outs and all that kind of stuff, there's thousands of people that are just doing it and really succeeding with it. First try, even. They didn't have the people I'm talking about. They don't meditate at home. They got a bunch of kids, and their in-laws live with them, and they work, and they escape for 10 days or 2 weeks and go to the meditation center and do really well. So yeah, we don't have that. We just don't have that tradition. People don't grow up here with faith in the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, and all that kind of stuff, and we're always weighing, we apply scientific principles to everything. We're like weighing all the benefits and pros and cons and ins and outs and all that kind of stuff, which, I mean, it's okay to do that, but it's nice if you don't have to.
Yeah. We have to go the long way, unfortunately.
Yeah.
We have to take the long road. We'll still get there, one hopes. And we're dragging a lot more baggage with us.
And
for
Westerners do.
All right. I could ask you questions all day, but I've monopolized your time enough. I think other people have things that they want to ask. So from Willie, I wonder what the outward presentation of someone who has gone the incorrect route would look like. Does it look like a psychiatric problem? David, do you have anything you want to say about that?
They don't necessarily present as, I mean, if they're just nuts, it's gonna be obvious, but they don't necessarily present as messed up or anything. Usually you find out in a conversation.
Okay.
I don't know. Is that a good enough answer?
Any answer you give is a good enough answer. We accept short answers, long answers.
Frequently,
answers that climb on
frequently
rocks.
I'll add, frequently a person who has a problem kind of thinks they might have a problem. And usually they want to talk about it. If they think you might, have some insight into it, they'll want to talk about it. That's a good indication. And they may present it as some wonderful attribute that they have, even. I got into a conversation with a guy at a meditation center, and well, he told me he was an arahant, and I went, oh. And then, and then he told me about how he's circulating energy all around and up and down his spine and everything. And I'm, oh, that's interesting, you know. And we spoke a few times over a few days, and then on the last day, before he was going to leave, he looked kind of worried. And what had dawned on him was that this energy that he had going, he wasn't in control of it. And it was like, he couldn't sleep, and it was, you know, like out of control, maybe like a Kundalini syndrome or something like that. And he was getting ready to return home to his wife and his business and all that, and wondered what he was going to do, you know. And you can't straighten out somebody like that in one conversation. That's a big problem. I have, did I say this earlier? I don't know. I have a couple of friends that succeeded at Kundalini and got the energy rushing up their spine and out the top of their head and all that, and spent the rest of their life trying to cope with it and get it to stop. And for me, that's an illustration of a, you know, kind of a dangerous, iffy meditation that, you know, unfortunately, these guys succeeded at. And like I say, it obsessed them for the rest of their life, trying to deal with it.
Oy vey.
But they talked about.
What'd you say, David? They what?
About it. They wanted to talk about.
Yeah, right. Cool. So I have another question that I think is similar perhaps to that one, but multiple people have asked me to ask it. And one person I think has asked to ask it themselves. So I think it's a slightly different angle on the same question. I think we've stirred up a lot of interest in this idea of dangers of meditation, probably because it's something that's not talked about enough. And so if it's okay, I'm going to go ahead and call on Morgan. Morgan, do you want to just ask your question?
Can I see Morgan?
You're about to.
Okay.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Hi.
Hi, David. Thank you so much for joining us.
Pleasure.
I was curious. I am relatively new to all these concepts. So just treat me as somebody who's totally unfamiliar with all these things. But I was curious, what are some of the adverse reactions? I think you just touched on some kind of a Kundalini syndrome or something, but what are some of the adverse reactions that you've noticed with people who do things incorrectly with meditation?
Obsessive thoughts that they can't stop, visions, you know, scary. I had a guy tell me, oh, I have like balls of fire being shot at me and I can't stop it. And also he had visions of green, kind of hostile, these are extreme. I'm saying, you know, these are extreme, like hostile, scary beings that kept appearing in his mind. And something like that, we call it concentration settled in the wrong place. And the treatment for that is, what I did is I put him to work, landscaping and trimming trees and going to the dump and getting dirty and talking and all that kind of stuff. If somebody gets concentration settled in the wrong place, you want to break it up, and usually they have a problem that they want to go back to it all the time, even if they don't even if they know it's not good for them. Sort of the mind has inclined that way and they want to go back to it. So they should probably not meditate for a week or longer. Watch some TV, go shopping, take a drive, work in the yard, and let that dissipate, and then start over in a better way. But people get for minor problems are headaches, a headache that just comes when you meditate and goes away when you don't meditate. You know, that's a sort of common one. I'm trying to think of minor problems. A lot of minor problems are just runaway. The mind runs away, you know, like gets carried away on some subject, you know, something or something that happened, some phenomena or something like that. And really the goal of meditation, not of all meditations, but of, you know, the major meditations, is to stop thinking, is to cut, you know, is to see thinking reduce and, you know, and that's where peace and tranquility and concentration, you know, you can't have a concentrated mind if you're thinking all the time. So if you're doing like loving kindness meditation, I call it crowding out. You fill your mind with thoughts of loving kindness, and that crowds out thinking about your mother or your job or your car or the bird in the tree or the jackhammer in the distance and all that. That's basically concentration meditation, is you choose one thing and you stick with that and you crowd out all the other things. Vipassana or insight meditation, you don't try and change anything. This is the beauty of it. And this is why it's so effective and so really easy to, you know, practice. Is you can do it anywhere, and all it is knowing what you're doing. Now I'm thinking, now I'm crying, now I'm hearing, now I'm washing, now I'm itching, now I'm scratching, now I'm talking, now I mean, it's amazing. That's what the Buddha, that's the major discovery and contribution that the Buddha made to the world of religion. And it's like, really? That's it? Just know what you're doing? I mean, most religions and, you know, most meditations are sort of outward focused, you know, on God consciousness or expansive this or visions of that or that kind of stuff. And insight meditation, I have a 24-year-old son, and I was talking to him about, and in the Mahasi tradition, they call it noting. I was talking about noting, and he said, it's not really noting. I went, oh, really? He said, no, it's knowing. I went, from the mouths of babes, right? I mean, that's brilliant. He's right. It's basically just knowing what you're doing. There's a technique for knowing what you're doing. And when you do know what you're doing, the mind can't run away as easily, because you know it as it's occurring, and that kind of takes the steam out of it. The mind needs momentum to get out there, you know, to get going, or get really angry or really sad or down on yourself, or these things that we don't like to have happen, you know. And with mindfulness, you can stop them. And if you can't stop them, you can contemplate them and they still unfold, but it doesn't bother you. You have a distance on it so it's not so personal. It's just the mind manifesting according to its nature. You know, if you have a habit of getting angry when you read about a politician or something, then when something triggers it, then off it goes, you know, and the mind's just used to doing that because it's unsupervised, basically. But if you see it starting, you go, oh no, I don't want to go there. That doesn't work out well for me. You can withhold, you know, you can pull back some support, be mindful of it, different things. Many of the problems are really kind of minor. They're more like technique, not applying the technique properly or misunderstanding what's going on. People in a meditation, in a Vipassana retreat or insight retreat, really common. They come to their interview and they go, oh, I should, you know, I don't know what I'm doing here. I should probably go home. My mind just goes on and on. I can't control it. I'm just doing terrible. And then you ask them, did you know before this retreat that you can't control your mind and it just goes on its own? And they go, no. Well, that's insight. And insight is sort of a counterintuitive thing, but it's learning about your mind. It's funny that it's the last thing we look at, but it's our entire world. You know, I mean, we know our world by what we see and taste and smell and hear and think about and touch and all that. But we don't look at the source and say, well, wait a minute, what kind of equipment is presenting this documentation to me? You know, what's processing this? So yeah, most of the problems are minor, and if they're caught early, they aren't even a problem. They're mostly just a misuse or a lack of proper application of the process. And the process is so simple. It's just knowing what you're doing. And somebody comes in and they say, oh, God, I was sitting and then I started thinking about my mother and I got angry and everything. And the common question is, did you note it? And they go, oh, that's right. I was supposed to be being mindful of these things. They forgot to be mindful. That's the big thing that people do, is forget to be mindful. Remembering to keep, and just because it seems really important doesn't mean you treat it any differently than something that isn't important. I don't know, did I answer the question a little bit?
Yeah, you answered it very thoroughly and very well. Thank you.
Oh, good, thanks.
Thanks, Morgan. Thanks,
Thank you.
David. So let's see. Oh, someone put in the chat, but just for anyone watching this video down the line, someone pointed out that, if you want to hear about adverse effects of meditation from more of a clinical perspective, researchers are starting to look into this. And if you're curious what researchers have to say, neuroscientists and psychologists and so forth, the person who I think is most prominent on this topic right now is Dr. Willoughby Britton, Britton, at Brown University. She runs an organization called Cheetah House for people who are experiencing more severe adverse effects of meditation. It's like sort of a halfway house for meditators who are kind of struggling, and it provides resources and so forth. So
yeah, I'm sorry to bring up the subject. I don't want to be a downer or a naysayer or something, but it's that's a legitimate concern. There are people that have problems.
No, I don't think you should be sorry for bringing it up. I think if there are people in the audience, which it sounds like there are, who didn't know that, who just sort of thought, as it's often presented, that meditation is just sort of a fuzzy wuzzy, all the time happy thing.
Yeah.
There should be warning labels on that package, So at least on my end, I appreciate you're addressing it. And I think the reason that so many of the questions I'm seeing directed at me have to do with that is because it's under discussed. So if it's okay, I'll ask another.
Go.
I'll bring up Fiona. Fiona, did you want to ask a question?
Yes, I would. Thank you. And thank you so much for just everything that you're sharing. So I got introduced to meditation through kind of the opposite way that you suggested. um, I am part of a recovery group, Recovery Dharma, that we, start all of our meetings with meditation, and it's usually concentration meditation. And so just thinking about with everything that you said, it makes me want to get more intentional with kind of discerning what practice particularly do I want to go into and how should I go about doing that. And one of the things I'm curious about is, do you feel like there are certain meditation practices that are better? I know you talked about how some ones will give you certain things that more likely, like if you want to feel this way, go this route. If you want
Yeah.
to feel that way, go that route. But if you're not really sure, do you feel like there's some meditation practices that might be the wrong meditation practices for some people? Or is it more just to make sure whatever you choose that you're doing it well?
Yeah, I don't want to, badmouth any meditations or anything. I would, for a person who wants a, kind of just a half an hour a day, meditation, has a life, has a job, and that kind of stuff, I would recommend loving kindness meditation. It feels good. It may, it makes loving, compassionate feelings arise in you. People like it when they're around you, your coworkers, your landlord. It's just a good thing for life, to add to your life. Insight meditation really isn't for everybody. It's pretty. If you just do it kind of casually, John, no, not John. Kabat-Zinn does mindfulness-based stress reduction. So it's not like you're walking and sitting for 10 days or something. It's a therapeutic use of mindfulness. So that's good. But if you get really serious about it, it can be very, you're going to go some pretty intense places. And many people, that's not what they want. They don't want to go, they don't want to know the truth of the world or the dark secrets of themselves or something. And that's fine. So then I'd say, don't spend your time on Vipassana, spend it on the loving kindness. And then that's, it's a feel good, relaxing, I would recommend loving kindness. And Sharon Salzberg, who's coming May 11th, I think, to this group, wrote a really good book on loving kindness. And I'm sure she'll be teaching, talking about it and sharing things about it. But the Buddha recommended loving kindness all the time to his monks and to his lay, because then he wanted them to get along and in harmony and compassion and patience and all that. And that's what loving kindness is for. That's what I'd recommend.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Also, I'm sorry to ask and run, but I have to run. So goodbye, everyone.
Oh, bye.
Thank you.
Bye, Fiona. Thanks for your question. Thanks for hanging out.
Thanks for everything.
All right, excellent. Let's see who's next. Who's up? Sean, you want to ask your question?
Sure. Yeah, so I was going back to, it was kind of related to what we were just talking about, but you kind of talked about how certain types of meditation might emphasize certain qualities. So is there do you have suggestions for or is it possible that like if you just like really stuck to one kind of meditation, like you might like somehow like get the wrong type of enlightenment or something? Like it doesn't seem like the worst kind of problem to have, but like you might end up like emphasizing like qualities that you didn't really intend to emphasize. Is that something you should be like careful about?
I wonder if I'm not sure I understand the question. I think I do. Are you asking whether some kinds of meditation produce an off-brand, not really enlightenment? Was
like
that
maybe like, is it possible for somebody like they think they're gonna emphasize certain qualities, but they end up like totally changing their personality in a way they don't really plan to do?
Yes.
That's something you should like watch out for.
Yes.
Are there ways we could like watch out for that?
Yeah. You definitely should watch out for it. If what you're doing, not you, but if what one is doing encourages thinking, I mean, a lot of people that think they're meditating are really just thinking. And you don't need to meditate to think. You can do that. You do that all day long. Can't hardly stop it enough to go to sleep at night. Not you, people. You know, thinking. There's plenty of that to go around. What you should be looking for is relief from thinking. You know, a simplified, settled, calmer, more peaceful mind. At least that's the traditional goal of most meditators. Is they want to stop the mind or get it concentrated and calmed and more manageable and just more easily dealt with and contained. And loving kindness does that. You know, it's you keep applying the subject, the meditation subject, and you're excluding all the other things that would have jumped in if there was room for them. That's all concentration is you get your mind going on one thing rather than, chaos. So loving kindness is good for that. Vipassana is good for that. It's a little harder, a little more active. When you get good at it, though, Vipassana is much harder at the beginning than it is later. It's hard to start reining in and corralling all these wild thoughts and ideas and sights and sounds and all that kind of stuff. But when you get good at it, then it becomes really effective. And you want to, you come home from work and you go flop in the armchair and do Vipassana for 15 minutes or something. And it's like, okay, now I feel better, I'm like, that's over and in the past. And now I'll just live from now on in a little nicer, more manageable way. Was that?
Yeah, I think sort of. I think what I was thinking of more was maybe it's like specifically related to like Vipassana style meditation. Like, can practicing Vipassana lead to different like sorts of personality changes or different types of insight depending on how you do it?
Yeah, you should do it right. Will it lead to my teacher when I went to his center and was going to practice, start an intensive course? He said, if this meditation leads to turning away from the world, would you be all right with that? And of course I said yes. I didn't know, I didn't know what he meant, or it sounded okay. Actually, a friend of mine brought a woman to me who thought she wanted to do Vipassana. And I told her that. I said, well, I'm going to ask you what my teacher asked me. And I never heard from her again. she didn't want to turn away from the world. And she said, well, what do you mean turn away from the world? It sounds a little worse than it is, a lot worse than it is. I mean, turning away from the world means not buying in quite so enthusiastically. And actually, when you do that, you can actually enjoy life more. There was a teacher, a Bengal teacher, who studied for years in Burma and then taught in America and mainly in Bodh Gaya. And somebody said to him, I don't want to get enlightened because I like to eat. And Manindra said, well, actually enlightened people are the only ones that enjoy eating, because they're there eating. They're not thinking about what they're going to do later this afternoon. And they're stuffing food in their mouth. They're actually eating. They're aware that they're eating. They note the flavors, etc. So that's not an excuse to not get enlightened. No, I mean, really, if you do it right, your life improves. And even if you really succeed and become what they, a stream enterer or a first path or a Sotapanna or whatever, I mean, their life is better. We're not doing this to suffer. We're not meditating or going to a 10-day retreat so that we can have a worse life or, experience more pain or something like that. I mean, that's like thinking there's plenty of pain and suffering. You don't need to go to a retreat to experience it. It's, we do all the time. So these things should be bringing happiness and peace and relief. It's like, oh, okay, yeah, that's better. I feel better. I'm not quite so wrapped up or carried away or whatever might be the problem.
Thanks. That was really helpful. I think that kind of covered what I was
thinking
about.
Thanks, Sean. Thanks, David. Eve C, do you want to ask David your question?
Hi. I really appreciate your talk so much. Thank you.
Oh, good. I appreciate all of you guys. Somebody says, oh, you're going to, I say, yeah, I get to go hang out with the best people that want to be more loving, that want to be more restrained, that want to have, bring morality and generosity into their life. I mean, you can't find groups of people like that just everywhere. So I'm glad to be here.
Yeah. Now all of a sudden I have like 4 questions and they are all different topics. So I have to pick one of them. But my initial question was about analytic meditation. And I know it sounds like you're probably not in favor of that. When I found out about it, maybe like 4 or 5 years ago, it was super helpful. It was like a lifesaver for me in a way, because I had so many thoughts.
It's more of a therapy.
Yeah, that I felt like I didn't have any way to organize, even to organize my ability to observe my thoughts at all, not even to look into them, but just to be able to have any relationship to the thoughts from my seat in myself.
Yeah.
So analytic meditation was like hugely helpful for me to start to get some kind of traction or a handle on the process of thinking and and to be able to see it somewhat more objectively.
Mm-hmm.
But then I had to start connecting the thoughts to physical sensation, and that also helped slow them down. But yeah, I guess I just wondered if you could talk a little bit about, just kind of helping people go through those steps a little bit. Because
Yeah,
for me, it's going to be a pretty long time before I'm sitting and there aren't a lot of thoughts.
Yeah.
But I do feel somewhat peaceful with the thoughts. So
well, that's as good as getting rid of the thoughts. If you can, when you can get distance, it brings my mind to mind my mug. Can you read it?
yeah. So yeah, no, they're like signifiers, you know.
Yeah, and they don't. There's no law that you have to like pay all kinds of attention to every thought that you have, or give it credence or authority. You know, somebody's sick. Oh, I have to feel bad. You know, you don't have. Who made those rules? You don't have to feel bad because or you lost something, or you broke up with, you know, a love interest or something like that. So you have to feel bad. You know, there aren't any rules like that. The rule that that I like is this making me happy? Is this leading? Are these thoughts leading to happiness? I mean, because that's what we want. You know, the ultimate goal is people want to be happy. And but if you feel required to spend all kinds of time and pay all kinds of attention and go through, you know, all kinds of trauma or something, you may not need to. I mean, I'm not saying that therapeutic, like, you know, the kind of analytical meditation or whatever. I'm not familiar with the exact, you know, but I'm not saying that's not good. Obviously, it's been, you know, it's helped you, and you know, going to a psychologist or, you know, confiding in a friend can be, you know, that's what some people need. That's not all they need, but if that helps them and unburdens them, that's good. But you don't want to get obsessed with the problems.
Right.
Uh,
You don't want
yeah,
to like the whole thing.
you don't want to accept every one. Okay, I got to deal with this one and that one and this one and that one. Yeah, frequently, you don't have to. It's, you know, you can just, you know, okay, well, I don't really want to do that. I think I'll just be happy instead. And that sounds like an oversimplification, but with some skills, you can do that. I mean, you see thoughts arising that you know where they're going to lead, and you don't want that. Think about your puppy or your dear friend, or take a drive, or go get a latte or something. Do something else that's better, that makes you feel better. I mean, it sounds very sort of self-serving, but I mean,
Yeah, you change how you're feeling and it changes what thoughts are coming up.
yeah, well, or maybe you just leave those thoughts behind and just go, okay, well, I'm not really in the mood for that right now. I want to, you know, do something that feels better. And with a little practice, you know, with some practice and some skill, you can do that. It's called, you know, it's a meditation tool. It's called substitution. I was driving with a friend of mine, pre-Christmas traffic, lot of traffic, and he goes, "Oh God, I should. What are all these people doing? You know, and I could have gone a different way, and it would have been quicker, and all that." And I'm thinking, well, we're those people also. We're part of this traffic jam, you know, and these people are probably, you know, maybe like going to the mall to buy thoughtful gifts for their loved ones, you know. So the difference being is how, you know, you can look at a situation in a number of different ways. And I said to him, you don't have to think about it that way. You can, you can, this can be a happy experience. He went, oh yeah, sure, that's easy for you to say, like all this. And he's actually a pretty developed guy. And a couple of minutes later, he went, you're right. And he just changed the subject, to something that is going to go a good place. I don't know. Did that help?
Yeah, it helped a lot.
Okay.
Thanks, Eve. Thanks, David. Let's see. Stephen, do you want to ask your question?
Sure, yeah. In the spirit of Earth Day, what are your thoughts on what Theravada has to offer in the way of ecological awareness, sustainable lifestyle, and climate justice?
Theravada doesn't really, the Buddha said, suffering and the end of suffering is all I teach. And he kind of, which I think was, he steered clear of politics. And in those, 2,500 years ago, I don't think environmental issues were, were an issue. I think if you, fill your heart with love and compassion for people, that's going to lead to concern for their drinking water and the sustainability of their agriculture and air quality and all that. I mean, I think, it's especially to the degree that those kind of things have become, I mean, they're water purity, air purity, and sustainability of agriculture are near crisis, if not crisis proportions. And they become, they started out long ago as a sort of environmental issues. They're becoming like public health issues and just quality of life issues. And, if you're practicing loving kindness and compassion and, and care about the welfare of you and your kids, if you have them, and everybody else, then I think they're fair game. I think they're very legitimate issues. Really hard to get results. I mean, there's really powerful forces that are not interested, So if you have the time and the inclination and all that, it's a good thing, I think. I mean, the world needs more concerned and not just angry. Anger seems to be the common response to everything nowadays, kind of, and that really, it has limited results. But good solutions, reasonable dialogue, and all that, I think, and a lot of people are getting on, even major corporations are getting into cutting their carbon footprint and all that. And I lived in Sonoma, the town of Sonoma, for years. A friend of mine had a vineyard service, and he was like this deadhead hippie guy. And he got one customer for an organic vineyard. And one thing led to another, and now he's got a huge vineyard services. I mean, they'll go from raw land all the way to you've got a vineyard. but also they'll manage and feed and prune and harvest and weed whack and, you know, all that kind of stuff. And the people with the organic vineyards have found out it's even cheaper to make organic wine than to use all the, you know, different sprays and herbicides and all that kind of stuff. So it's not a lost cause. And apparently President Biden had a very successful climate meeting today. I think it was today, wasn't it? Yeah, Thursday. I don't know. I just saw a little blurb that said it went, you know, it went well. So, and countries are recognizing that if they don't do something, their water, you know, they're gonna like die. I was reading about in India, the garment industry is so huge, and they're dyeing all these things and manufacturing all this stuff and putting it all in the rivers, that the rivers are like gone, you know, and then the agriculture that relies on those rivers can't use that water and are you know, can't grow their, you know, having a hard time finding water to grow their crops and all that. So it's a viable, you know, it's not like nobody's talking about it or anything. I think it's good. Like I say, if you have the time and all that. The thing, the Buddha said, how can one who is caught in the quicksand pull another out? So the important thing is to straighten out yourself. I mean, it's nice to straighten out the world, but if you straighten out yourself, you're doing more than you could have done in any other way, almost. I'm not saying you haven't, I'm saying one. I'm not using you as in particular. I'm just saying, you know, the best thing you can do is clean up your act. And then if you're inclined to, you know, join a community group about water, I think it's very important. Fracking. There isn't enough water. One frack is like 10 million gallons of water that is then poisoned. And they have 8 or 10 drills, you know, and they frack them all multiple times. I mean, Jesus, that's tens of millions of gallons of water on each little location, and they're all over. I mean, it's just not sustainable. But the, you know, petrochemical industry has a lot of money and is very well connected, and they get what they want pretty much, you know. So can you change that? You know, it's worth trying. Just that for the water supply. And I mean, water now, you know, you buy a little bottle of water, it's more expensive than gasoline. It's becoming, and now the big hedge funds and everything are investing in water. So what do they know, you know, that we don't? For instance, water's the next big thing, you know. But yeah, anything you can do to help, we can use it.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thanks, David.
thank you.
Thanks, Stephen.
Mhm.
So I'm gonna call on what I think will be our last questioner. There are a few folks in the queue. I'm sorry, we won't have time to get to all of you. You know, I'd love to be here all night. But one, certain people will get mad at me, and 2, things just need to end. All things that have the nature of arising have the nature of ceasing.
Yes.
And this Q&A is no different. So Monica, do you want to ask your question?
Sure. Wow. Thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity to ask this question. I think it's meant to benefit not just myself, but other people too. So you mentioned earlier the the difference between students from Asia versus from the West. And so I guess my question is, what advice would you give to a student who maybe reads a lot of Dharma, who does a lot of talking about Dharma, who has lots of theory or insight? Like, what tips or guidelines?
Has lots of what insight?
Who have read a lot about different types of insight or progress.
Oh, okay.
Maybe what guidelines would you give them for their practice in terms of helping? Yeah, like you know, if the Western students tend to be too far left, how would we get back more towards a grounded practice-based approach, if that's what you would suggest?
Thinking isn't going to do it for you. All the ideas, words in books, the words and ideas that the Buddha spoke about were just guideposts, guides, you know, signs, guideposts to get you to act, to get you to be more moral, to get you to be more loving, to get you to be more restrained, to get you to be more concentrated, to get you to be more insightful through practice. The Buddha said, the Dhamma is not accessible by logic. The ideas are good, and if they point you, you know, I mean, we need them to point us towards things, but thinking isn't going to do it. It's about experience. He also said the Dhamma is to be experienced. And that means, like, if you want to be more loving, you can read all about it, but you need to experience it, you know, put it into action, learn how to grow it in yourself and how to express it and that kind of thing. And as far as insight meditation, it's so simple that that we almost can't grasp it. It's simpler than thinking. It's at a level below thinking. I like to say that the truth is simple, the mind is complicated. So to experience truth, you have to get beyond the mind. You have to stop the mind, really, or at least get it completely in sync with what's going on. I mean, that's what mindfulness is about, is not having distance on what's going on, you know. And it's really simple to, it's so simple to do. It's so illusory to, you mean all I have to do is know what I'm doing? But what about if I, you know, or what about this, or should I know in this way? I know people that are trying to do Vipassana meditation. I have a friend that's been doing it for 50 years or 30 years or something like that, without success. Really bright guy, which is too bad. Thinking smart doesn't count. That's another aphorism. Smart doesn't help you. I mean, being dumb is not good, but the smarter you are doesn't mean the better you're going to do in spiritual practice. It may even hinder you. But so my friend, my bright friend, he's a PhD psychologist and all that, a neat guy and knows everything, can quote every Dharma verse and all that kind of stuff. And he is trying to find the truth that's hidden in a moment of thinking or hearing or seeing or something. There isn't any. You don't have to go searching, scrutinizing, looking for subtle things that are hidden in your mental and physical processes. You know, the reason in the Mahasi method, you know, you note hearing, breathing in, breathing out, hearing, wondering, thinking, imagining, itching, scratching. The reason you note those things, they're just what they are. Their face value is what they are. And what they are, they have a beginning, a sort of a brief life, and they pass away. They're gone forever, that one. You may hear something else, but it's not the same one. These things are arising and passing away really too fast. You can't keep up with it almost, but as long as you're seeing one at a time. And then after you've done that 50,000 times or 500,000 times or something, your mind goes, these are impermanent. And it's like, duh. It's like, I mean, that's the message that's the wisdom and the higher truth that you know, I'm including myself in this category. You know, it's like it took that many times looking at that stuff to figure out it's impermanent. And then, you know, the three characteristics: impermanent, unsatisfactory, not self. You know, so you see impermanence, and then you go, you know, this really isn't all this mind that I'm watching on and on and on isn't really that great. It's not really making me happy necessarily. It's kind of oppressive. Oh, unsatisfactory. And then you keep looking and you realize these things are just happening on their own. I'm not creating. I don't say, may I now hear. You know, somebody honks a horn and I hear. Or I'm just and thinking. I'm not orchestrating what I'm going to think and how I'm going to think about it and all that. It's just happening. Not self. It's not mine. That's it. You get fully enlightened doing that. That's all you have to do. And you can, all your dreams can come true. But it just seems too simple, you know? And I knew this monk. He was a Brahmin, Indian, you know, Indian person, but he was a Theravada monk. He had been a professor and, you know, was this very educated, knowledgeable, wise, and full of himself kind of neat guy and all that. And so he studied all the suttas and Abhidhamma and everything. And then when he felt he knew all the information, then he said, and he told his teacher, okay, I'm ready to meditate. And the teacher basically told him, okay, just be aware of what you're doing. He was so offended that a guy as smart as him, I mean, I'm saying that wasn't exactly the way the instructions were. It's like, you know, be aware of your mind as it arises and passes away or something like that. And he was so offended that someone so smart and so knowledgeable and everything would get such a dumb, simple, you know, that's a meditation subject for a fool, you know. But he overcame his resentment and did it for a while and went, oh man, this is the bomb. Like, you know, once he had done enough of it, he realized the wisdom and effectiveness of what he was doing. So, yeah. Did I answer the question?
Yeah, thank you so much.
You said I did answer it?
Yeah. I'm not going to
Okay.
talk about it more.
What I would say to a Vipassana practitioner is stop thinking and just, you know, give up, let go, don't expect, don't judge, don't look for what might be coming because you don't know what's coming. Just be mindful. And I'll repeat what I said earlier, that Venerable Pamasari, I asked him, how much effort is right effort? How hard should I try, in other words? And his answer was, right effort is just enough to be mindful. Most people are trying too hard. If you're being mindful, that's it. If you're seeing one thing after another, you're doing it. Okay.
Thank you, David. Thanks, Monica. So let's get ready to wrap. We're going to say our goodbyes, but David suggested that we have a meditation at the end. We've gone on a little longer just because the Q&A was so good. So we'll do a shorter meditation, but the world's not going to end. Meditation's the most important thing, but we don't have David Leonard every day. So you gotta squeeze every last drop out.
And you don't stop meditating when the hour is up either.
That's true. So what we're gonna do is
for 10 minutes and then just turn off your device and keep going,
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. So
one thing I wanted to say was, when you set aside a time for meditating, are you also setting aside a time, the rest of the time, for not meditating?
I'm flummoxed by this question, David.
I mean, people say, okay, I'm going to sit every morning at 9 o'clock and then for an hour. And then when 10 o'clock comes, then they don't meditate anymore. And you can be aware of what you're doing when you're walking, when you're washing, when you're doing the laundry, when you're sweeping the floor, when you're taking a bath, when you're brushing your teeth, when you're, don't partition your practice into one little segment of your life. In fact, I encourage people, build a practice that works for you, that you can sustain like as part of your life, not as a segment. Can I be loving all day? And can I know that I'm walking when I'm walking? Yes. I often wonder, what do people think about when they're, when they go to sleep? That's one of the main things I think about. I mean, I can't imagine trying to go to sleep without meditating in bed.
Well, David, we can't be doing that all day. I mean, that's when we listen to podcasts. So that's not really an option. No, I'm just kidding. No, a really excellent point. And thank you for making it.
You want to build a whole person that works for you all the time is the point I'm trying to make.
Yeah, thank you. You're absolutely right. I mean, I do think that meditation teachers in general, us in Sitheads too, maybe basically everyone who's into meditation perhaps overemphasizes formal practice and underemphasizes daily life practice. So I really appreciate the reminder.
I can't tell you how many people I know of that got first path, second path, going to bed, taking a nap.
Ananda did it, right?
Standing in the garage. It's like, we don't know the forces that we're putting to bear, and we don't know how they're going to unfold. So, and it's not all about meditation. It's about being a good person. It's about being a kind person. It's about being generous. It's about being patient. I mean, all of these qualities are major contributors to waking up, not just meditation. A lot of, it's kind of You know, it's more common that people meditate, that wake up when they're at a retreat or something like that. But it's not the rule by any means. I can assure you that you don't know. You know, I know a person that I know a couple of people that decided, oh, they were at a retreat and they went, I'm not going to do this next meditation. I'm burned out. I'm tired of this stuff. I'm going to just stay in my room and take a nap. And they laid down to take a nap and got first path. Mainly because they were over efforting. And when they relaxed and gave up, then bingo. So yeah, don't try to decide how it's going to happen or when or what you need or something like that. Just do everything you can, you know, to be a better person and a more mindful, you know, just more aware and, you know, develop good qualities. And if you're practicing mindfulness, that's what gets people enlightened, is mindfulness. This is the only way for the purification of beings, for coming to the right path. 4 foundations of mindfulness, the Buddha said, only way. This is the only way. So, and if you're doing it, woohoo, rejoice. You're really lucky. I used to reflect on how fortunate I was. And Dhamma told me about rejoicing. I went, rejoicing? Yeah, don't just reflect on all your good fortune and how wonderful the Dharma is and how lucky you are to have come across it and to have experienced, you know, some progress and all that. He said, rejoice. Oh my God, it changed my life. It's okay to rejoice. Happiness is a wholesome state of mind.
Thank you so much, David.
My pleasure.
On behalf of everyone, I think everyone really got a lot from this. I certainly got an enormous amount. You said a number of things that I certainly needed to hear with respect to practice. So I'm very grateful to you for that.
Good.
And if you out there in Zoom land are grateful, or if you are watching this video, because I'm going to put a button below this video for this, and you would like to offer Donna some support, donations in gratitude for these teachings out of a spirit of generosity, I'm putting the link in the chat for Donna. I'm putting the link for David's website. I'm putting our website. If you ever want to hang out with us again, we do this stuff all the time. Yeah, and are there any last things that you want to say before we say our goodbye and then sit?
No, I've said enough.
Well, thank you everybody for your questions and for your attention and your presence. And thank you, David, for the Dharma. So let's sit. Bye, everyone.